Hello and welcome back. This comparison is going to be very detailed and therefore a little bit longer. Please follow the time warp links in the description below to get access to the specific information you're looking for. Within the following 20 minutes, we are going to compare Sony's most powerful and professional and compact full-frame sensor cameras that exist at the time on planet Earth. Both of them equipped with a 42 megapixel backlit sensor, both of them extremely small and handy. Each of them equipped with an excellent Sony ZEISS 35mm lens and a fast hybrid autofocus with 399 focal plane phase detection, covering 45% of the total image area. They can hardly be compared to anything else alike available on the market but to themselves. The Nikons, Canons, Leicas, Pentexes of the same price range, or even Sony's latest release, the Alpha 99 Mark II A-mount full-format sensor camera, are all either much larger in dimension or just not as high-tech as those two Sony flagships. Just to mention their advanced inbuilt 5-axis image stabilization systems, their variable optical low-pass filters respectively, the complete absence of it, if not to speak about the whole range of available Sony Play Memories camera apps that allow direct access to time-lapse, hyperlapse, star trail, motion shot, light painting, light trail, intelligent multiple exposure and stop motion functions, just to mention a few. Yes, certainly, since the Alpha 7R Mark II is an interchangeable lens camera, it takes advantage of access to various lenses through the E-mount connector. It can connect with the whole range of full-format E-mount and APS-C lenses produced by Sony or Carl Zeiss, as well as third-party producers, namely Samyang or Voigtlander, for example. In the end, through various available adapters, the Alpha 7R2 can connect to almost every other available professional or experimental lens out there on planet Earth. But here we wanted to compare specifically the Alpha 7R Mark II to the RX1 Mark II. That's why we chose Sony's ultra-sharp and surprisingly compact Sonnar D-Asteroid FE 35mm f2.8 ZA full-format lens to be mounted on the 7R-M2. By its compact dimensions, it does not exceed the idea of working with something ultra-compact of highest technical perfection, as it would be the case with Sony's Distagon T-Asteroid FE 35mm f1.4 ZA already. This lens would simply be too large comparing to the general form factor of the RX1 M2 with its inbuilt 35mm lens. As for most of the other lenses, either they would be stretched out and much more heavy due to the additional material that has to be added at the tail of each lens, this part here. This is because it is required to replace the missing distance between the sensor and the inbuilt optical elements inside each lens. The same process is replaced by the different E-mount lens adapters in a similar way. Only with Sony's ZEISS SEL35F28Z at cost of a little less faster f-stop of 2.8, Comparing to an f-stop of 2.0 at the RX1 R Mark II, this has been made possible. With this video, we can certainly not cover all the different aspects of both cameras that you may imagine or that you may want to become aware of. Therefore, we want to focus just on certain aspects in handling and quality that we thought would be really necessary to mention in the given context of this video. If you have any further questions, please write them into the comments below or just follow us to stay up to date with possibly upcoming future videos of similar style. On one hand, there is the Alpha 7R Mark II, which is in this case equipped with a 35mm lens for a good reason. And on the other side, we have Sony's RX1 RII Mark II, which comes only with a 35mm lens because it's a built-in lens. It is a little bit smaller. We have been working with the Alpha 7R Mark II during several months, and that's why we thought it could be now a good moment to rent the RX1 RII Mark II to make this kind of direct comparison, because somehow they have a lot of similar qualities, as you will see in the following video. The Alpha 7R Mark II, together with the 35mm lens, weighs about 783 grams, which is quite heavy, but on the other hand, it's a very handy thing to have this grip here on the right side. Since this camera is laying so well in the hands, the RX1 R Mark II weighs 537 grams. This is slimmer for sure, but here the space is missing to somehow get a detailed grip on it. So this is a camera which will always be at your fingertips. It's light enough to be so, but it's just a different feeling to hold it in the hands. Still, compared to the old camera housings, for example the one of the Alpha 57, which by the way is just an APS-C camera and not a full format sensor, those two cameras are much smaller, and the Alpha 7R Mark II is to be located somewhere in the middle in reference of size. I would say this RX1 Mark II, in its dimension, it's more similar to the RX100 Mark IV or Mark V, but it has additionally this huge 35mm lens in its front side. So then one more aspect in reference to the size. It is quite obvious that this camera here is much higher, but you should not forget this is because of the optical viewfinder, which is T-asteroid nano-coated. But to have the same viewfinder here also you have to pop out this finder, and then these two cameras are already much more similar. One more aspect in reference to the lens. If you take away the cover, it looks actually much smaller, this one, than that one, but besides this little cover which you have here, there is also this additional element, and when you take it away, then both 35mm lenses are actually really of very similar size. The image sensor is located around here, whereas the sensor of this camera is located around here. This lens has also an additional macro mode, which will make it a little bit bigger on that side. In general, this Alpha 7R Mark II has a little bit more gray touch to it, whereas the RX1 R Mark II is more in a black finish. Here you have, similar to, for example, Sony's RX10 series, a switch between the different focus modes, which does not exist in this way in the Alpha 7R Mark II. But here on the other side, this very nice grip is actually missing in this camera, and this would be one point for the Alpha 7R Mark II, because I really like this handy grip on that side. Both cameras are equipped with the NF NFC near field communication possibilities so that you can exchange data to other devices like smartphones or computers in a distance of around 10 to 20 centimeters. Both cameras have the video record button here on the worst imaginable position. This is the same problem also with the RX1 series, but they found a better solution with the RX10, which was originally also existing, for example, in this old Alpha 57. So here the record button was just in the perfect position to be reached with the thumb. No one knows why Sony decided to put those record buttons here at the outer edge of those cameras. On the bottom of the camera housings, you can see very well the different shapes with the grip and without the grip here on the right side. But for sure, the Alpha 7R Mark II has a much larger battery comparing to the RX1 RII Mark II. So these two batteries are really of a very different size, and I think in the same way also this one is going to last longer. Even though battery life of the Sony cameras is not so super convincing in general, it is never really a problem just to carry some more of those batteries around. Here on the left side there is really a huge difference. The Alpha 7R2 has two different covers and they are made in a style which I actually don't really like so much. You have to open them like this, and then there is this little rubber which will hold it, but it's not really compact and it's very flexible and hanging around. You don't really know where this material is going. You have the multi-connector here and the HDMI jack, and in front of it you have a micro external input and a headphone output jack. So this is all very nice if just the cover would not be such a funny material, whereas on the RX1 RII Mark II this cover is very compact, just to click out like this, and then there is even small feathers integrated. I don't know if you can see it so well. Here there is these little feathers which make to open and close it a very compact experience. You have the multi jack and then you have the micro HDMI jack and also an external mic in. The headphone out is missing. The last point here, I have to mention this knob for the viewfinder to pop out like this. Having mentioned the viewfinder already, I want to say that I'm really a big fan of the viewfinder of the Alpha 7R Mark II versus the other one. Not only that the Alpha 7R Mark II has a 0.78 magnification and this one only 0.74, but also the distance to the eye here, it is much closer and it is much more convenient to look inside this viewfinder, whereas here there is no protection on the side, and then also the distance to the eye is much longer. So for example, if I look through here, and I prefer to look through with my left eye, maybe because my left eye is somehow connected to the right side of my brain, then my nose will always end up here on the screen and smear on it. Whereas when I look through here with my left eye, then my nose will end up here, which is completely fine. This is very nice to look at from both sides with the right eye or with the left eye. And this one here is nice to look through with your right eye, but if you want to look through with the left eye, then the nose, there is always not enough space. Really not so well experienced with this viewfinder here. In both cameras you can choose to have monitor and viewfinder in an automatic mode. Same one also here. Here is the menu button on the A7R2, whereas the menu button on the RX1 RII Mark II is down here. You have the custom or customizable button number 3. This would be number 4, and here is 1 and 2 on the top. On this camera, 2 of those customizable buttons are missing. This is C1 and here is C2. But altogether you can also define different places of the camera, like here those 4 directions, north, south, west and east, as custom buttons. So this is possible to do inside the menus. Then you have an auto exposure lock here and in the same position also on the A7R II, but you can also switch to a manual focus lock, which is missing in that sense. And here you have the custom menu, the most important menu functions that you would request to appear on your camera. They are both in the same position. And then here you have predefined this part of the mode wheel, like the western part of the mode wheel for self-timer and the ISO. This is not necessarily predefined here. If you want to review photographs, this will be on the top right of the computer screen and on this other camera on the down right next to the computer screen. The monitor itself, here I think the RX1 RII Mark II has a much more handy monitor. Look, this is so fat and you can open it. And this feels very compact, very convincing, very stable. It's a nice tool to work with. You can open it to look from downstairs like this, and then from the top even a little bit more like that. This is really super convincing, super compact, super stable, like also what we had here on the side already. Whereas with the Alpha 7R Mark II, this monitor, it has almost the same format, but I don't know how to describe it. The edges are a little bit less nice. The whole thing, it moves into the same angle. Everything same, but still it's different. I can tell you this screen here is less compact than the one of the RX1 Mark II. Believe me or not, maybe it's just a millimeter of difference, but in the sense of the tactile information, this one here, much better piece of work. Before we come to the test images and videos, we want to compare the top view of those 2 cameras. As I already mentioned, here there is those custom 1 and 2 buttons, whereas on the other hand we have only 1 custom button here. Then there is the selection wheel between the different standard modes. This is pretty much identical, even though here you have 3 custom sets that you can choose and define yourself. But here we should not forget, in the A7R Mark II there is this nicer, little bit bigger photo button with the on and off button integrated inside. And here is one more selection wheel in front, which is missing on the side of the RX1 RII Mark II. This is one more little difference between those 2 cameras. Both cameras have the same multi-connector here on top. There is one very relevant difference between those 2 cameras, but you can recognize it only in a very small detail. Look, here is written 4K, and it is true. The RX1 RII Mark II does not allow you to record in 4K, even though both cameras have a 42 megapixel full format sensor. You are limited to HD resolution with the RX1 RII Mark II, and this is one more reason why I think it would make much more sense to decide for the Alpha 7R Mark II, besides the fact that this camera has access to all the lenses available on planet Earth, basically. Last but not least, we want to compare those 2 cameras with the macro mode, because it's kind of relevant. In the A7R Mark II there is no macro lens inside the 35mm. So I have this beautiful piece of dust here and want to make a photo of it. I will switch to automatic mode and then turn on the camera, and just to make you understand, I cannot go so close. Minimum focal distance, it's around 35mm. The camera automatically recognizes that we are now in macro mode, and when I do the photograph, basically this is what you're going to get. Actually, I'm not so sure if with the A7R2 it was 35mm, maybe 30mm of minimum focal distance. But here now we come for the RX1 RII. I will also switch to automatic mode, and so here minimum focal distance, it automatically recognizes that I want to do the macro mode again. I focus and then click. This is what you're going to get. But when I switch over to the macro mode with this lens, looks like that. 1 second, check. And this in the end, you know, means you can really get closer to this dust particle, and it can look like that. That means you have much more range in the close distance area.